My best friend destroyed every relationship I had for 7 years, so I trapped her. My best friend destroyed every relationship I had for 7 years, so I trapped her in one she can't escape. Natalie had been my ride or die since freshman year at Northwestern University. The friend who knew all my Netflix passwords, my deepest insecurities, and every embarrassing detail of my dating disasters. She was perpetually single, always joking that Chicago men weren't sophisticated enough for her standards, while I cycled through relationships that mysteriously imploded right when things got serious. Brandon lasted 5 months before he ghosted me after receiving screenshots of explicit messages I'd supposedly sent to his roommate. Messages I'd never written, using phrases I'd never say. Natalie showed up at my Lincoln Park apartment with deep dish pizza and White Claws, theorizing that Brandon probably wasn't ready for a real woman anyway. "You're too good for him, Sky," she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled like her signature vanilla perfume. Connor broke up with me via text after finding my alleged profile on Tinder. Party girl looking for NSA fun, no strings, just good times. The bio included details about my body that only someone close to me would know. I hadn't been on dating apps in over a year. Natalie held me while I sobbed into her shoulder, suggesting maybe I was unconsciously self-sabotaging because I was scared of commitment. The worst was Ethan. He left me sitting alone at Gibson's Steakhouse on my birthday after receiving an anonymous call claiming I was secretly married and just using him for fun. 30 of my closest friends watched him storm out, leaving me with a $200 dinner bill and a birthday cake no one wanted to eat. Natalie appeared 20 minutes later with a bottle of Prosecco, rubbing my back as I tried not to cry. "Maybe you have some toxic patterns we need to work through," she whispered gently. Every relationship ended the same way: anonymous messages, fabricated evidence, and Natalie's sympathetic shoulder to cry on. She'd analyze what went wrong, suggest therapy, bring comfort food, and help me learn from each devastating breakup. I trusted her completely because she was always there to pick up the pieces. The pattern was so consistent it should have been obvious, but when you're in the middle of heartbreak after heartbreak, you don't see the forest for the trees. Each time, I believed her theories about my dating karma, my commitment issues, my tendency to choose the wrong guys. She was my best friend, my constant, the one person who never left. Looking back now, I can see how perfectly orchestrated it all was. How she'd ask seemingly innocent questions about my relationships, gathering intelligence she'd later weaponize. How she'd encourage me to share intimate details, claiming it was healthy to be open with your best friend. How she'd always have an explanation ready when everything fell apart. But at the time, I just felt broken and grateful to have someone who cared enough to help me figure out why I couldn't make love work. I kept Luke's secret for 3 months. No Instagram posts, no girl talk, no casual mentions during our weekly brunch dates at and Sather. I even saved his contact as FedEx delivery in my phone, paranoid about protecting this fragile new thing growing between us. Luke was different from my usual type. Where I typically went for the flashy finance bros in their German luxury cars, Luke was a high school English teacher who drove a Honda Civic and spent his weekends volunteering at the animal shelter in Evanston. He read actual books, not just Wall Street Journal articles. He made me laugh without trying to impress me. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe in a relationship. We met at a coffee shop in Wicker Park when he accidentally grabbed my lavender oat milk latte. Instead of the awkward apology most people would offer, he looked at the cup and said, "Well, this explains why my mornings suddenly got more interesting." His smile was crooked and genuine, nothing like the practiced grins I was used to from dating in Chicago. Our first date lasted 7 hours. We started with dinner at a tiny Vietnamese place in Chinatown and ended up walking along the lakefront until 2 a.m., talking about everything from his students' terrible poetry to my dreams of opening my own marketing firm. He listened when I talked, really listened, instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. I was terrified to introduce him to my world, especially to Natalie. Something deep in my gut warned me to keep this precious thing protected. So I created elaborate cover stories for our dates, claiming I was working late or visiting my sister in Milwaukee. I hated lying, but I'd learned to trust my instincts about guarding what mattered. But secrets in Chicago are hard to keep, especially when you're as social as I am. 3 months in, we ran into each other at my cousin Rachel's wedding at the Chicago History Museum. Luke was there as the +1 of Rachel's college roommate, looking handsome in his navy suit, completely unaware that he was about to enter my real world. "Skylar." He looked confused but happy to see me across the cocktail hour crowd. What are you doing here? Rachel's my cousin, I admitted, feeling my carefully constructed walls crumbling. What are you doing here? Emma's date. He gestured toward the bride's side. Small world. The wedding was beautiful, and Luke charmed everyone he met. My aunts loved his stories about teaching, my cousins appreciated how he actually listened to their college drama, and my parents were smitten when he complimented my mom's dress and offered to help my dad with his bow tie. It should have been perfect. For the first time in years, I had brought someone home who felt right, who fit into my family like a puzzle piece I didn't know was missing. But during the reception, as we swayed to Ed Sheeran's Perfect under the twinkling lights of the museum's garden, Luke's phone buzzed insistently against my back. You should check that, I murmured, not wanting to break the spell but knowing the night was ending anyway. He pulled out his phone and his face went white. Skylar, he said slowly, why is your best friend sending me photos and saying you two share boyfriends? The messages from Natalie were devastating in their intimacy. She'd sent photos of herself in lingerie I'd helped her pick out, along with detailed descriptions of my body that only someone who'd seen me naked could know, someone who'd been in countless dressing rooms with me, who'd stayed over after girls' nights, who I'd trusted with every vulnerability. Skylar doesn't have to know, one message read. She's used to sharing with me. We've done this before, she actually gets off on the competition. Why do you think all her relationships end? She sets it up this way. Another message included the story about my birthmark, the one shaped like a tiny star on my hip that I'd drunkenly revealed during a vulnerable moment sophomore year. She turned my deepest insecurities into weapons, my secrets into ammunition. Luke's hands shook as he scrolled through the messages. She says you told her I was just a phase. That you're already bored and looking for your next conquest. His voice cracked on the last word. Standing there in my emerald bridesmaid dress, surrounded by the laughter and joy of my cousin's perfect wedding, everything finally clicked into place. 7 years of destroyed relationships. 7 years of mysterious anonymous tips and fabricated evidence. 7 years of crying on Natalie's shoulder while she orchestrated every single heartbreak. Luke, I whispered, reaching for his hand, but he stepped back. Is any of this true? He asked. Are you playing some kind of game with me? The hurt in his eyes was unbearable. This man who'd spent 3 months showing me what real love looked like, who'd never pressured me for anything, who'd waited patiently while I learned to trust again, he was looking at me like I was a stranger. None of it's true, I said desperately. I've never sent her anything like this. I don't know why she's doing this, but I swear to you, none of it's real. But I could see the doubt creeping in. The messages were too detailed, too personal. They painted a picture of a manipulative woman who used her best friend as an accomplice in elaborate psychological games. Without context, without knowing Natalie's pattern of destruction, they were completely believable. I need some time to think, Luke said finally, pocketing his phone. This is a lot. He left me standing alone on the dance floor as all of me played over the speakers, my cousin's happiness suddenly feeling like mockery. I wanted to chase after him, to explain everything, but how do you defend against lies so carefully crafted they sound like truth? Instead, I found myself walking to the parking garage, my heels clicking against the concrete as my mind raced. 7 years of friendship, 7 years of trust, 7 years of believing that Natalie was the one constant in my chaos. But this wasn't chaos. This was calculated, methodical destruction. And for the first time in my life, I understood exactly who my real enemy was. The confrontation I'd planned never happened the way I imagined it. I spent 3 days crafting the perfect speech, printing screenshots of Luke's phone, gathering evidence of Natalie's manipulation. I practiced in my bathroom mirror, trying to find words big enough for a betrayal this massive. How do you confront someone who's been systematically destroying your life while pretending to comfort you through the wreckage? I drove to her Lakeview apartment on Thursday evening, my hands shaking as I climbed the familiar stairs to 3B. The key she'd given me 2 years ago still worked, a symbol of trust that now felt like a weapon in my palm. Nat. I called, pushing open the door. We need to talk. The living room was dimly lit, her usual vanilla candles burning on the coffee table next to 2 wine glasses and an empty bottle of Pinot Grigio. But it was the sound from her bedroom that made my blood freeze, low voices, intimate laughter, the unmistakable creak of her bed frame against the wall. I should have left. Should have backed out quietly and called later, demanding answers over the phone where I couldn't see her face, couldn't watch her perform innocence while my world collapsed. Instead, I walked toward her bedroom like I was in a trance, my heels silent on the hardwood floor. The door was cracked open just enough to see everything. Natalie was sprawled across her white comforter, wearing nothing but my Northwestern sweatshirt, the one I'd been looking for all week. Her red hair was spread across the pillow like spilled wine, and her head was resting on the chest of someone I recognized immediately. Luke. My Luke. His hand tangled in her hair, both of them half-dressed and completely absorbed in each other. They looked up when they heard my sharp intake of breath. Natalie's green eyes went wide, and fake tears started forming before she even spoke. "Oh God, Skylar," she breathed, pulling the sheet up to cover herself. "This isn't what it looks like. He told me you two broke up. He said you were too clingy, that you scared him off with all your relationship drama. He said he needed someone more mature." Luke didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He just shrugged, his arms still around her shoulders. "She's right, Sky. Nat's more my speed. She doesn't come with all the baggage." The words hit me like a physical blow. Baggage. All those destroyed relationships, all that pain she'd caused, and now it was being used against me as proof that I was damaged goods. "We didn't plan this," Natalie continued, her voice breaking in all the right places. "It just happened. After the wedding, he was so confused about everything, and I was just trying to help him understand what kind of person you really are. One thing led to another." I stood there in the doorway, still holding my purse full of evidence, my carefully rehearsed speech dissolving into white noise. This wasn't just about sabotage anymore. This was about stealing the one thing I'd managed to protect from her destruction. "How long?" I asked quietly. "Sky, please don't make this harder than. How long have you been planning this?" Luke sat up straighter, finally showing a flicker of discomfort. "Look, it's not like we set out to hurt you. But after those messages she showed me, all the stuff about your history." "What messages?" Natalie reached for her phone. "The ones you sent me about Luke. About how he was just another notch on your bedpost, how you were already seeing other guys behind his back." She showed me the screen. Messages from my number, time-stamped over the past month, describing Luke in cruel detail as just another temporary distraction. Messages I'd never sent, from a phone that was currently in my purse. That's when I realized the true scope of her planning. She hadn't just ruined this relationship, she'd been setting up its destruction from the moment she realized it existed. While I thought I was protecting Luke by keeping him secret, she'd been weaving an elaborate web of lies to ensure that when she finally struck, I'd have no defense. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone at the wall or demand explanations or beg Luke to believe me. Instead, I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest, something that had been dormant for 7 years of heartbreak and gaslighting and systematic emotional terrorism. I smiled. "You're right," I said calmly. "You're perfect for each other." And then I turned around and left, already planning exactly how I was going to destroy her. Natalie's deepest fear wasn't being alone. It was being trapped with someone beneath her carefully curated standards. I knew this because I'd listened to her drunken rants for 7 years. During our wine nights at her apartment, she'd rank her deal-breakers with surgical precision. Short men, she was 5 feet 9 inches in flats, anyone without a college degree, mama's boys, and especially losers who peaked in high school and never evolved. She wanted a man who looked good in her Instagram photos, someone impressive enough to make her sorority sisters jealous at their 10-year reunion. Someone who could afford the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to, who'd take her to Napa Valley on weekends and surprise her with jewelry from Tiffany. Someone like the fake version of Luke she'd fallen for before discovering he was just a high school teacher with a Honda. So I went hunting for her perfect nightmare. I found Bryce through a friend of a friend's cousin, a web of connections that couldn't be traced back to me. He was 5 feet 6 inches on a good day, lived in his mother's basement in Schaumburg, and worked part-time at a vape shop in a dying strip mall. He spent his weekends getting high and playing Call of Duty. His most recent relationship had ended when his ex found his extensive collection of anime body pillows. His dating profile picture was him shirtless, holding a base he'd caught at some muddy lake, wearing a backwards bull's cap and a chain that had definitely turned his neck green. Perfect. But I needed Bryce to look like Prince Charming online, so I hired him for what I called a social media consulting project. I told him I'd pay $800 to use his name and basic information for market research on dating apps, testing how different presentation styles affected match rates. Bryce didn't ask questions. He just wanted the money for a new gaming setup. Then I bought a photo package from a stock photography site, a male model who was 6 feet 2 inches, perfectly groomed, in expensive suits and casual wear that screamed successful professional. I created an entirely new version of Bryce, 28 years old, real estate developer, owner of a small yacht docked at Belmont Harbor. I added every detail Natalie had ever mentioned wanting in a man. Wine collector, I researched enough to sound knowledgeable. Northwestern alumnus, easy to fake the school pride. Traveled extensively for work, stock photos from business trips to London and Tokyo. Had a rescue dog named Hemingway, stock photo of a golden retriever. The personality I crafted was surgical in its precision. I'd spent 7 years listening to Natalie describe her perfect man, taking mental notes I'd never thought I'd use. He quoted Rumi and Pablo Neruda, poets she'd mentioned loving in college. He did volunteer work with Habitat for Humanity. He accidentally let slip that his real estate ventures had made him a millionaire before 30, then bashfully changed the subject. Every message was calculated. When Natalie posted about a stressful day at her marketing firm, Bryce would text about wanting a partner who understood ambition, not just someone looking for arm candy. When she posted makeup-free selfies fishing for compliments, he'd message about preferring natural beauty over Instagram filters. Within 3 weeks, she was obsessed. She showed his photos to everyone at work, started planning their future after conversations about wanting the same things. She turned down actual dates from real men because she was taken by someone incredible. The hook was set perfectly. All I had to do was reel her in. When Natalie demanded to meet Bryce in person, I knew the trap was ready to spring. I paid the real Bryce another $600 to show up at Wildfire in Lincoln Park, dressed exactly as himself. No coaching, no fake personality, just pure, unfiltered Bryce in all his basement-dwelling glory. Just be honest about your life, I told him. Talk about whatever you want. She's expecting someone completely different, but I need you to be authentically yourself. Bryce shrugged and pocketed the cash. Whatever, dude. Easy money. I arrived 30 minutes early and positioned myself at the bar with a perfect view of the dining room. Wildfire was Natalie's favorite first date spot, expensive enough to impress, public enough to feel safe, and critically, it was always packed with her coworkers on Thursday nights. Her boss Janet was 3 tables away with a client. 2 women from her team were at the corner booth, and I could see at least 4 other familiar faces from her office Christmas party. Perfect witnesses for what was about to unfold. Natalie walked in wearing her lucky red dress, the one she'd worn to land her last 3 serious boyfriends. Her hair was perfectly curled, her makeup flawless, her confidence radiating across the room. She looked like a woman about to meet her future husband. Then Bryce walked in. He was shorter than her even without her heels, wearing a wrinkled Naruto hoodie and cargo shorts despite the October chill. His hair looked like he'd just woken up, he reeked of marijuana and energy drinks, and he was loudly talking on his phone about his Call of Duty ranking while vaping indoors. I watched Natalie's face drain of color as he approached her table. "Yo, you Natalie," he said, finally hanging up. "Sorry I'm late, dude. Had to finish this boss fight. You look way different than your photos." The restaurant was full of her professional contacts, people who'd been hearing about her amazing new boyfriend for weeks. Janet kept glancing over with amused interest. Her team members were barely containing their smirks. Natalie couldn't leave. Not without everyone witnessing her reject someone after bragging about him endlessly. Not without admitting she'd been catfished or worse, that she was shallow enough to judge someone based on appearance. So she stayed. And Bryce, high as a kite and genuinely thinking this gorgeous woman was into him, proceeded to have the time of his life. He ordered the most expensive steak on the menu, talked loudly about his theories on anime plotlines, showed her mobile game achievements on his phone, and described his living situation with his roommate, his 58-year-old mother, in vivid detail. "She does my laundry and makes the best Hot Pockets," he explained enthusiastically. "Plus, rent's free, so I can spend all my money on the important stuff, you know? Like my gaming setup and this sick vape collection." Natalie's smile grew more strained by the minute, but she couldn't escape. Every time she tried to signal for the check, Bryce ordered another drink and launched into a new story. Every time she attempted to gracefully end the evening, he'd misread her politeness as encouragement. By the end of the night, Janet had sent over a bottle of wine for the happy couple, and half the restaurant was invested in their bizarre dynamic. When they finally left, Bryce was completely smitten. He'd spent 2 hours with a woman who was way out of his league, and she'd laughed at his jokes, albeit painfully, and listened to his stories, albeit trapped. To him, it was the best date of his life. Within hours, he was texting her constantly, showing up at her office with gas station flowers, and telling everyone who'd listen that he'd found his soulmate. Natalie was trapped by her own reputation and ego, unable to admit she'd been deceived without looking foolish, unable to reject Bryce without appearing shallow to everyone who'd witnessed their romance. The beautiful irony was that she'd taught me this technique herself. She'd used my reputation and social connections against me for years, making it impossible to defend myself without looking crazy. Now it was her turn to be the victim of her own manipulation tactics. That was 18 months ago. Natalie is still with Bryce, and the beautiful thing is, she can't escape without destroying everything she's built. Bryce genuinely believes they're soulmates. He tells everyone who'll listen about his amazing girlfriend, who's way out of his league but loves him anyway. He posts constant social media updates about their relationship, tags her in memes about true love, and has already started hinting about marriage. Natalie pays for everything, their dates, his gas, his new gaming equipment, even his contribution to his mother's rent. She's trapped in a relationship that's costing her thousands of dollars and slowly destroying her social standing, but leaving would mean admitting she's exactly as shallow as everyone suspects. Her co-workers have stopped taking her seriously. Her dating reputation has crumbled from too picky to desperate enough to settle for anyone. The sorority sisters she wanted to impress are placing bets on how long she'll stay with someone so obviously wrong for her. But the most beautiful part is Bryce himself. He's actually a decent guy underneath all the anime and video games, just immature and unmotivated. He's kind to her, faithful in his way, and genuinely grateful for her attention. He's not abusive or cruel, just beneath her standards. She can't claim he's treating her badly. She can't paint herself as the victim of anything except her own poor judgment and fear of embarrassment. Last week, I ran into them at Target. Natalie looked exhausted, pushing a cart full of Xbox games and energy drinks while Bryce excitedly explained the plot of some anime series to a bored cashier. "Skylar," she whispered when Bryce went to get something from another aisle, grabbing my arm with desperate fingers. "You did this, didn't you?" I looked at her with the same innocent confusion she'd perfected over 7 years of gaslighting me. "Did what? You're the one who fell for him." Her eyes filled with frustrated tears, the same tears I'd cried countless times while she comforted me through heartbreaks she'd orchestrated. "I know it was you," she hissed. "The timing, the way he found me, everything about this is too convenient." "Nat," I said gently, using the same patronizing tone she'd used on me for years, "maybe you should consider that you have some toxic patterns we need to work through. I mean, look at the choices you're making." Bryce returned with a case of Mountain Dew and threw his arm around her shoulders. "Babe, ready to go? Mom's making pizza rolls for dinner." I smiled and waved goodbye, leaving Natalie trapped in her perfect prison. Meanwhile, I'm engaged to someone wonderful, someone I met after cutting Natalie completely out of my life. Someone she never got the chance to sabotage because she was too busy dealing with her own relationship disaster. His name is Oliver, he's a pediatric nurse at Children's Memorial, and he thinks I'm the strongest person he's ever met for surviving 7 years of systematic emotional abuse and still believing in love. He's right. I am strong. Strong enough to let Natalie destroy herself with the same weapons she used against me. Justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about giving someone exactly what they deserve and watching them realize they can't handle it. Natalie taught me that relationships could be weapons. So I made her one she can't escape from. And unlike all the hearts she broke with her lies and manipulation, this trap was built with nothing but the truth about who she really is underneath all her pretensions. The truth has a way of being the cruelest revenge of all.